Alrighty folks, welcome back to the MASKENBALL project. Today we're diving deep into the first stage of weathering. Surface prep, perfecting your decals, chipping and layering effects to set the stage for that gritty, lived-in look we all love. This isn't just about slapping on some scratches, it's about building up depth and realism. We're talking sanding, additive and subtractive chipping, layering tricks, and some sneaky moves to make that finish pop. So grab your sanding sponges, your brushes, and maybe a snack. It's going to be a fun one. First off, let's prepare the surface with the subtle abrasion weathering technique. Wet polishing the grey-violet camo paint develops subtle scuff marks in chipping through to the underlayers. The brush marks infused into the surface become usable texture, which the sanding sponge can catch on and remove. Now, great care and restraint are needed here. We're only sanding very thin layers of airbrush paint, and they don't have any filler or substrate beyond what's contained within semi-gloss mister color. Yes, of course, you can go down to the red oxide primer if you're brave enough. This technique also flattens the paint finish, making it perfect for upper-facing horizontal surfaces. The effect mimics UV degradation, not so much by fading the paint, but by making it appear dulled and flattened. The gun arm gives us fantastic opportunities for longitudinal and edge effects with this gentle abrasion technique. Now remember, chipping doesn't always need to be overt. Paint bruises and scrapes add a great deal of life and depth to our finish, and this is an excellent way to produce them. Experiment and observe closely. Similarly, the longitudinal effects work beautifully on the Neue Panzerschreck launches. This is also where we can take care of the step left behind by our sharp masking during the previous paint steps. Have a really close look at my gallery shots and you'll see the fine damage, depth and realism I've been able to produce in this area. This step and technique lay a strong foundation for that look. If you want to go into more detail with this technique, I suggest my abrasion weathering video I showed you on the Alter HUND if you're keen for more. So these shoulder armor pieces have gone through what I'll jokingly call the buffing, and they're now ready for, again I'm kidding, but the glossing. Yeah, I know I talked about using the buffing process, the abrasion, to remove the gloss and flatten it, but trust me, it'll return. That's the fascinating part of this process. By flattening the paint surface, we create a dynamic effect where the gloss and matte qualities will shift back and forth, just like things do in real life. New paint is usually pretty glossy and then it gets beat up and goes flat. I don't usually show varnish effects on my builds, but the questions come up often, and I felt this particular build was a great opportunity to share how I get the decals to blend in beautifully. You know, most of the time. Yeah, no kidding. This is another step, and it's not 100% necessary at all, but if we want to invest the effort, in this build in particular, I felt it was worth it. I'm using Mr. Color Super Clear GX100. It's a fantastic clear gloss coat. Big fan. I keep it slightly thicker than my color coats, so I'm spraying it about 50-50 mixed with Mr. Color Self-Leveling Thinner. It's the Sex Panther of clear coats, but better, I swear. For this step, I hammer it on pretty hard. Not fire hose, rattle can hard, but I'm not shy with it either. No mist coats here. It needs to be thick enough to settle into a nice shell coat. Yes, I spray it all over the different paints, including water-based acrylics, as long as they've had enough time to cure. A rule of thumb, 24 hours and you're golden. Now a quick, lazy pro modeler bench tip. I keep a line of tape on my clear glass paint bottle jar to eyeball my clear coat mixes. It's fast, easy and pretty idiot-proof. I pour in the GX100 until it visually covers the tape. Then I squirt in the Mr. Color Self-Leveling Thinner all the way up to the top and boom, I'm ready to spray. Works every time. Now check out this number 2 decal. The design and quality are fantastic. Full opacity, dense ink coverage, and 100% color fast. Naturally this comes with a trade-off in thickness, but we can work with that. The first step is to seal in the decal with more gloss clear. Yes, I'm using more GX100. Well-equipped modelers might want to upgrade to a larger airbrush nozzle for this, like a 0.5mm. I might splurge on one for some of these large airplane kits I've got coming up, but for the moment now I just use this 0.3mm nozzle on these mecha size kits and make it work for everything, just like I have to. Yes, in the past I've used a spray can for this step as well, and it's viable, though more expensive per action and spray. Although once I've added up the cost of getting everything, I do wonder. Walking the mile, walking the mile. I'm polishing the parts, I'm polishing the parts. Now, using that same sanding sponge with the 800 grit, I've wet polished the edges of the decals. You'll see them disappear as you smooth down the edge. Then I come back again with GSX 114 Super Smooth Clear, my new favorite flat coat. Yes, the sanding residue of the lacquer clears blends into the next sprayed coat as they are held in suspension when they re-wet with the paint and thinner mix. This may take multiple coats as you learn this skill, so be patient. This is a pretty high-spec finesse move, not a first swing easy home run kind of thing. You will improve with practice, I promise. I see this as a continuation of surface preparation and an important step in both detailing and preparing the model for weathering. It seals in the weathering steps, prepares the surface for decals, which add a ton of detail and sharpness to your model, and then further blends everything together for that painted on look. You can see, even here with the largest decals in the kit, they've been blended in perfectly. They look like they're in the paintwork, and the reason is because they really are. This elevates your finish a great deal. Now I have some follow-up process points because I know you'll have questions. First, yes, you can do this more than once. The gloss coats, the buffing, the flat coats can all be repeated as needed. Just inspect your finish and learn from it. The airbrushed clear varnish coats may take longer to harden up, likely because the rattle can versions we use contain hotter chemicals, or maybe I'm just losing my sense of time due to those hotter chemicals. Oh, sweet, sweet Mr. Superclear fumes. Next, be patient with gloss coats. They tend to go on thicker and just need more time to settle down and harden up. If they feel tacky or the sanding sponge grips the surface too much, it's better to back off and come back later. And lastly, I know this because yes, I have messed them all up. I'm impatient too. Yep, I'm sharing hard-won experience, and I hope the heads up makes you feel better when you do exactly the same thing too. Alright, quick pit stop in our Mask and Ball journey. I've got some exciting news. The hard proof for my new Volume 3 HUND book just arrived, and it's absolutely fantastic. And guess what? This very Mask and Ball project is featured inside. Let me show you real quick. If you want to dive deeper into the build details and see some more epic shots, you can reserve your copy now, exclusively at Paint on Plastic. This book is only available directly from me, no resellers, no middlemen, just straight from my workbench to your hands. It's a limited run, so if you're thinking about grabbing one, don't wait too long. Alrighty, book update over, let's get back to the weathering hijinks. Now with a reasonably flat finish, I'm ready to continue on with what most folks probably think of as the traditional weathering steps. And that should probably answer the question, which surface type do you like to work from, Link? Faux paint chips using water-based acrylics, and much like the paint scheme design, I went with a reasonably complex approach using a range of colors. The first step was with a light blue, or again, Hellblau, to help sell the illusion of the upper paintwork chipping away to reveal the light blue underneath. I found it to be a very pleasing color to work with and experimented with both a wet palette and, just a milk bottle lid to help the paint become a little thicker. Sometimes I feel the wet palette working against me for steps like this because it can lead me to over-thinning the paint, whereas the milk bottle lid, it helps me to work in short bursts with maximum opacity of the paint as it was designed. Just showing you what happens to me, of course. You do you. After the light blue, I opted to go one layer deeper and add fresher chips in red oxide color, representing slightly darker chips that can go down to the primer. Not too many, just enough to add a taste of complexity and bring more dark red to the finish, which works fantastically well with this colorway. That's right, one of the things I love about a sci-fi finish is that we can choose the colors that work well and look good, and just nudge them into looking real. That's something I experimented heavily with in my HUND finishes, but especially these latter ones. I'll show you what I mean on another one soonish. After establishing a good amount of the lighter chipping, I've come back with a dark brown, the one I like to use. It reads perfectly as a dark ferrous oxidization chip color, even on machines that aren't meant to be made from ferrous composites. Shh, that secret stays between you, me, and YouTube. I've mostly kept these tight and brush applied, but I did also use a couple of the ye old bathroom sponge ring chips because, I just really like how they look. Now I could have edited this to make it look like this was my plan all along, but I felt a little transparency might actually help my friends with their modeling choices. Looking at the chipping so far, I felt it needed more larger, more impactful chipping to really sell the head picture image I had in mind. So I've come back and gone for more. I know it sounds funny, but many of you don't need to hear this, but I also know there are folks out there who are like me that do need to hear it, so this is for you. Yes, we are allowed to do additional rounds of processes to make the model look right to us. I remember when this concept clicked for me, and honestly, it's really helped my modeling. So I've come back and loaded up my big old wedge of cheese sponge to lay down some larger, longer scratches. Then I've augmented them with painted in effects, like adding scratch lines connecting the flaked off patches and extending some details to make them sharper and more accentuated. Please revel in this freedom to just make it look cooler. And the best part, if you don't like your handiwork, you can instantly backpedal with a little water and a Q-tip. Just make your corrections quickly, because if you let the paint harden or cure, well, we don't do that, do we? Now you old friends who've been watching me for a while will know that I usually go from the feet up, but you've noticed on this HUND I've gone top down. And yes, it changes things. Now ask yourself on your next model, do you go harder or softer pull back with your weathering at the beginning or the end of a project? Honestly, the answer doesn't matter as much as I just want you to know you so that you can be mindful of when to push yourself instead of backing off. I gradually built up the testicular fortitude to push harder at the end. And this time it worked for me. These harsher feet chips turned out great. I kept them angular using a wet sponge and pushed the effect as far as I could stand it. And you know what? I'm really happy with it. Did it need a little dialing back? Well, yeah, but I love knowing that I pushed myself as far as I could. And that's a wrap for part 1. We've set up the surface, established the foundation, and started pushing the first layers of wear and tear. In part 2, we'll take it even further. Deeper panel work, pressed weathering pigments, and 3 kinds of oil techniques to really hammer in the realism. If you found this useful, please hit that like button. It really helps keep these videos going. Drop me a comment and let me know what part of the process stood out for you, or if you've got any burning weathering questions. And if you want early access to part 2, join the Brobot crew on Patreon. That's where I share behind the scenes updates, bonus content and sneak peeks. Thanks for hanging out and see you in part 2. Oh, and don't forget, if you want to go even deeper into the MASKENBALL project, please grab your copy of Volume 3 HUND before they're all gone. Links below.